Thank you very much. He is a class act.
Right.
Nicholas Brady,
Right.
the former Treasury Secretary of these fine United States. Well, the Treasury's capital infusion plan now well underway, as he pointed out. $160 billion promised to about 30 banks thus far. Perhaps many CEOs should be thanking Uncle Sam and you, the taxpayer, since it looks like they'll be using the cash for expansion, acquisitions. Not exactly what the original architects of this plan had in mind. Now, John Berlau of the Competitive Enterprise Institute is not surprised by these developments, nor does he share my prior guest's enthusiasm for all of this. Why not, John?
Well, your other guest was a smart guy, former Treasury Secretary Brady, but I think the equity markets understand the credit markets all too well, and they realize that nationalization, full or partial, is not a fix here any more than it is in countries such as Cuba and Venezuela.
Now, the argument on the part of the Nick Brady others for this, as you probably heard, John, is it's not nationalization. It's about the government helping along, taking a passive voting stake, then stepping back when they're back up on their feet, sort of like a kid learning how to ride a bicycle. What do you make of that?
Well, I think we've gone along and gotten further and further. And one of the things is, even though, I mean, banks, a lot of the cases had to be jawboned to take this, believe it or not. There was a Washington Post story. A lot of regional banks said, you know, we were conservative in our lending. We don't want this. And Secretary Paulson was basically like, you're going to take this. And so now it's seen as almost a government seal of approval that you have to take this. But in the meantime, there are restrictions that hurt existing shareholders, like, you know, you can't issue more dividends. I think SunTrust was cutting its dividends.
Right.
That would make it harder for them to raise private capital in the future.
So let me ask you, we're running through some of these mid-tier banks that have accepted the money. Is there, and I've looked through this, John, but you're probably smarter at reading this whole package than I am, and I see no quo for the quid. You know, I don't see any hell to pay if they don't lend this money out. If they hoard it, that seems to be fine. It's not in their interest, arguably, to hoard it because they're missing out on what could be a generous loan volume. But if they've lost 30, 40% of their money and seen colleagues wiped out, why would they want to lend?
Well, this is a problem with the bailout in the first place. Once the government has the money, it can pull the strings, and the next administration will have a lot of say. But I don't think it's necessarily that they should lend. I mean, they should be, one of the lessons the credit crisis taught us, they should be more careful in their lending. So, yes, they may use it for mergers and things like that, which wouldn't be an issue if it weren't our money. And, and we think, we should be having some demands on this. But this just shows the flaw in doing this in the first place.
You hit on something very profound, John, that the days of easy money are gone, with this new infusion or not, and that we might be returning to what it was like during our parents' time, when there were only a couple of different types of mortgages. You had to put, 20% down, you had to have a good credit record, and story. And we grew to the point that there were more loan options than there were loans. So I'm wondering whether just returning to that 50s, early 60s is mean or reality.
I think in a lot of ways it's reality that this is what should happen. The market should self-correct itself. I mean, there is not. I mean, things change. There are innovations in financial markets elsewhere, and they'll find something that has some of the innovations of the previous mortgages, but are more careful. But in the meantime, you would expect to see a shrinkage of loans, and it's the market sort of sorting itself out.
Okay, John, thank you very much. We'll see how it all works out.
Neil.
Friend Berlau. Well, forget about